Great. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We got a lot of people coming. We're going to have big breakout groups, but what I'd like to do is invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. To use chat to name yourself, and especially if you'd like to be meeting somebody new or make some connection here.
Yeah, let us know your name if you're here with an organization and where you're zooming in from. All right, Linda, let's get started.
All right, let's get started. So welcome to the November 17th event by Housing Crisis Action here in Marin and the Bay Area Housing Advocacy Coalition. My name is Linda Jackson, and I'm a member of Housing Crisis Action. And we're delighted to bring this event to you today. It's two parts. One is a little exercise we're going to do about affordable housing, and the second is a panel discussion that will be moderated by a member, Joanne Webster. Next slide. So we have three goals tonight, very simple. By the end of the evening, you'll have a better idea about what we mean when we say affordable housing. We'll have a workshop where you will try to find some housing based on some income that you will have. And then there will be a panel, so you'll learn from those who are working here in Marin about making Marin more affordable and what we can do to help. So do mute right now. And then in the breakout rooms, you can unmute if you have something you'd like to share. Share your video in the breakout rooms. It makes it a little more personable. And then if some reason you get kicked off, just rejoin back in and we'll get you put into a group. Next slide. The agenda is, we're going to do a few introductions here for Housing Crisis Action and HAC in San Francisco. We'll do some breakout groups. And then we'll come back and debrief a little bit about what we learned. We'll take a 5-minute break to stretch, stand up, go get some water, and then come back for the panel. The panel, you don't have to leave. You can just, that's where you might turn the video off. The panel will be recorded. So you may want to leave your video off for that part if you don't like to be recorded. We'll have some Q&A and then we'll wrap up. Next slide, please. So what is affordable housing? This is the definition we're going to use tonight. It is from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, HUD, and it defines affordable housing as one that a household can rent or obtain for 30% of its household income. So 30% of what you make a month is what is the affordable amount for a place to live. So we'll be playing around with that coming up. Next slide. But first, when we asked you previously, what does affordable housing mean to you? You meant that it means justice and equity, compassion and dignity, survival for people who work here, access to making a vibrant community here with diversity. It's a critical social determinant of health, and it means families, young people, older people, people from all walks of life can work here and live here, and they're able to do it at an affordable amount. Next slide. So we're going to meet I'll be one of the facilitators. I'm going to meet two of the facilitators tonight. So Ethan and Olivia. Want to introduce?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Linda. My name is Ethan Stroll, and I am from San Rafael and work with the Bay Area Housing Advocacy Coalition. And we are an alliance of businesses and organizational and individual members who work to support housing policy, transit-oriented development, and creative solutions to keeping housing affordable across the Bay Area. And my work is specifically in Marin, organizing in Marin County. Olivia, do you want to go?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Olivia Bergen. I am BayHAC or SF Housing Action Coalition intern. So happy to be here.
Great. And next slide. Whoops, there we go. Oh, there we go. Katie and Joanne. Oh, you're on mute. Please unmute yourself.
I found my voice. Hi, I'm Katie Quaifman, and I'm with Housing Crisis Action. Our mission is to create, build, and preserve housing in Marin County, and we do so through education like this, through convening and mobilizing our network, and making Marin County have the political will to say yes to housing.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joanne Webster. I'm also a member of the HCA Steering Committee, and I'm also President, CEO of the Centerville Chamber of Commerce. And I'm really looking forward to going through this exercise with you tonight. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Next slide, please. So we're going to go over the instructions now very quickly, and then you'll get to do it again in the small group with one of your facilitators. So the first thing is I will give a little introduction about the HUD income limits for affordability. You'll join a breakout group. You're going to receive the profile of a real Marin worker. These are real Marin jobs. These are people who live in Marin. And you're going to do some math. There's a calculation for your person about how much that person can afford for an affordable rent for a place to live. And then you're going to look for a place to live with that rent amount. And you'll then see at the very end what your level of affordability is when we look at the Marin tables. Next slide. So to find your monthly rent, and again, you're going to do this, you don't have to write this down, but there is some math. You take your monthly rent. Generally, some of these profiles, you'll take, for example, the amount you get per hour times 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, 12, and you divide that by 12 months and you find out how much you make a month. That monthly amount divided by or times 30%. So it's a third of your monthly income can go toward rent to be an affordable rent. Next slide. And to find your place to rent, you are going to have some needs in your profile, and you need to look for something that's in that price range. And you'll be talking about what does seeking housing in Marin for your profile tell you about housing in Marin. Next slide. So this is the HUD income limit table. There is affordability of a unit is based on how many people are in your household and your annual income. So I give an example here. This is for Marin, this little table here. There's a different one for every county in Marin. For Marin, if you take at one time in my life, there were 6 people in our household. We had 3 kids and my mother. So, and my husband and I were starting out. So we had professional salaries, but we were making somewhere between 100,000 and 161,000 with our 2 incomes and with 6 people in the house. So you could see the red number there. That meant that we qualified as a low income household. Now, of course, that changes as your kids grow up and leave, or as you add kids to your household, as you get a job or you lose a job. You move around on this, but that is this table you're going to see again. Next slide. So the breakout rooms, it's a 10-minute activity. There's 5 breakout rooms. Each one has a different profile. You have a facilitator to help you through, and we'll come back together in the main room. So let's go off, and you're going to get a prompt that says join the breakout room, and you click yes. Click on that prompt. Hi, everybody. Are we all back, Katie?
Yes,
Hi.
looks like we're all back.
Yeah, okay. Hope everybody has we'll put up let's see, I'm not sure we can get everybody up on the screen, but we're going to walk through really quickly and hear how people did in your different groups. So if there's somebody who is in your 20s, is there somebody who would like to share how much they make, what their dream job was, how much they had to spend, and what kind of place they found to live? I see anybody raising your hand? You can unmute yourself, please. Who was the facilitator? Oh, there you are, Lisa. No, Lisa, you're not in group. You're not in the 20s.
Here, I think Evan's raising her hand.
Evan?
Hi.
Yes. Share with us.
Yes, my dream job as a welder, I am a single parent with 3 kids. Actually, I think welding would be a really cool job.
Welders.
Yeah, so I could not find anything within my price range. I make $72,000 a year. And my options were either basically I live in Vallejo right now, stay in Vallejo, go up to Santa Rosa, Lake County, or live with my 3 kids in an apartment.
Well,
Sorry, not a studio apartment.
a studio apartment,
A studio.
which I
yeah,
will share
in
that
Marin.
a lot of people working are living in studio apartments with their 3 kids. So yeah.
Yes.
So you did find a
Bunk
place.
beds.
I'm assuming some of the other people here did as well. How about somebody in their, thank you, Evan. Thank you for sharing. How about somebody in your 30s?
That would be my group.
Okay, somebody in your group, Katie?
Nancy, you found a place. Do you want to talk about it?
Nancy, tell us about your job and your situation and what you found.
Nance.
Was that the Mill Valley Townhouse for 2,200?
No, it was a San Marin Drive one for 3,600.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, tell us about who you are first.
Well, a director of finance is the position. I make 125,000 a year, which is 10,416 a month, and 1/3 of that is 3,125 a month for rent. And most of the 3-bedroom, 2 baths, which was what our requirement was. Most of the 3-bedroom, 2 baths were in the 4,000s, but I did find one at 36, which is $500 over the 1/3.
Can you tell us a little bit, Nancy, about your life and who's in the household with you and what you were looking for or hoping to find?
I was looking for a 3-bedroom, 2 bath. I assumed that would mean a family, 3 bedrooms, one for the parents, one for the children, and then an office or a gym or something like that. So they were wanting a 3-bedroom, 2 bath. That was the description.
Okay, and you did find something, sounds like?
Well, at 36 on San Marin Drive, which is a bit of a busy street, but it's still, relatively, nice.
And you
Is
were
San
making-
Marin Drive in Novato.
Yeah, you're making 125,000 a year, so that's good. Okay, next in the 30s.
That was
That was the 30s.
the folks who were working at Pet Food Express. I think we're on 40s. So anyone who in my breakout room, Lewis, I think you found a pretty good place to be.
Lewis, can you tell us about who you are, how much you made, what your family situation is, and what you found?
Yeah, I'm a single person. I got a job at Pet Food Express at $20 an hour. I was going to live with a friend so we could upscale a bit. We found a 2-bedroom on B Street because I don't own a car. I wanted to be able to walk to the San Rafael Transit Center. And we found something, our 30% was $22.90, and I believe it came in at $21.45 or thereabouts.
Okay, you found a 2-bedroom for that.
2-bedroom, yes, it was 2-bedroom.
Good deal. Was it hard to find that?
It was medium hard. San Rafael's expensive. There were a lot of studios and 1-bedrooms in that price range. So there wasn't a lot of 2-bedrooms. It's not a huge place either. It's 665 square feet.
Okay, cozy. How about
Cozy.
somebody in there? Yeah, how about somebody in their 50s? We have somebody volunteer for the 50s?
I believe our senior was in their 60s and
Wait, somebody in their 50s.
oh, I'm sorry, I was section 4. Sorry about that.
You're next, get ready. Lisa, go for it. Tell us about who you are, what you were looking for, and what you found.
Okay, let me go back to my profile. So I am a newly divorced single person in my 50s with no alimony and 50% custody of 2 high school daughters. I started working as an in-store shopper at Whole Foods, and I'm looking for a room to get back on track. I live in Mill Valley, or lived in Mill Valley when I was married, and I want to stay as close to my community as possible. So I earn about $31,200 a year, which means $2,600 a month, which means that I can afford $780 a month for housing. And so I started out trying to stay within my budget and looked on Craigslist for rooms for rent. And I found really only 1, 2, 3, 4. I found 5 rooms that were in my price limit. The interesting thing was that several of these, and some of them were actually in Mill Valley, San Rafael, Sausalito, but several of them said they were commuter rooms, which said that I had to either be out during the daytime or that I could only use them during the week, which is hard. And then I looked at apartments and found that the only apartment that was in that price range was senior housing at Nova Row in Nevada, which is affordable housing for seniors. And I'm not a senior and I have 2 daughters, so I can't take that.
Okay, I'm gonna, so an example of that, this is like the welder, the person with the 2 kids visiting part-time are going to have to perhaps sleep in the sleeping bags on the floor of the studio. So, and for the last one, the 60s, who's in the 60s? Joanne, you have somebody from your group?
Sure, I believe we had someone find a place, but there was skepticism of whether or not it was an actual real listing. Eli, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I closed the window, but if I recall, we were, I think, a grandma in our 60s, and we had a grandchild staying with us. So we needed a 2-bedroom place. We worked in childcare in San Rafael. We made, I want to say, like $3,500 a month, which came out to maybe like 42 grand a year. And that put our housing budget at like $1,050 a month. And there were like no listings that fit this. I did find one in, it looked like from the Zillow listing, it looked like a brand new 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment for rent in the city for, I think it was $960 a month, but that just doesn't add up. I think we were all kind of skeptical based on our knowledge of the market, especially in the city, of how that would exist. So not really sure what's going on there. Some of our members thought maybe it was like, misleading advertising for 1 room in that apartment, or we weren't really sure what was going on. But I think we were, there was consensus that it didn't really seem to add up.
Okay, and the goal was to find a place in Marin. It sounded like you probably were ending up in a bedroom, in a studio somewhere.
Yeah, nothing in Marin.
Well, there were rooms for rent, so you could have found a room somewhere. Right?
Yeah, well, we needed 2 bedrooms for like our grandkid.
Not everybody gets what they want. If you want to rent, that's the point here.
Yeah.
Well, Linda, we also looked at 1 bedrooms and put the kid in the living room.
Yeah,
and even that, you couldn't get that for $1,000 either.
Yeah, so that's the challenge. So if I could have the PowerPoint show back up, Ethan, and then we'll do a couple of real quick wrap up here, and then we'll take a short break. So how is that? We've done this part. Next slide. So you'll hear a term, I think, coming up about below market rate. What you looked at were all market rate units for the most part. I think Lisa mentioned seeing a senior affordable, but when you're on Craigslist and Zillow, you're looking at market rate units. Below market rate units are units that are subsidized and protected through government process at a rent that's affordable to lower incomes. So this is taken today from the County Housing Authority. And you can see at the bottom in the pink, it says, we're sorry, but we're not accepting applications at this time. Actually, a couple of days ago, they did have a few units up listed, but this is where you can go on the county's housing site to see what kind of below market rate units might be available for you. Next slide. The point is that there is not enough affordable housing in Marin County. Market rate is expensive for lower wage Marin workers. There's not enough supply to meet the demand. We have 70,000 people commuting to work here in Marin every day. Well, maybe not right now, but we will again. And the challenges we have is single family zoning all over, which really limits the housing, how much new housing can be built in those areas. And then multifamily zoning might not allow the kind of density that would allow for more housing to be built that would be affordable. So in order to build affordable housing, need to have subsidies. You'll hear the term inclusionary requirements, which is one way that cities get a housing that's affordable and protected for lower income workers. There are direct subsidies of grants and tax credits, zoning bonuses that would allow more units than what the baseline is. And then also preserving current affordable housing and adding accessory dwelling units to single family homes. ADUs rent for not all of them, and they don't meet all the market, but they do rent in many communities at affordable levels, affordable to lower income households for 1 or 2 people. And so now we're going to take a short break. Be back at 5:40, stand up, stretch, and get ready for a fantastic panel with some experts who are going to talk about how to build. Thank you. We'll see you in at 5:40.
Get started.
Absolutely. Thanks for staying with us, everybody. Just a reminder, I'm Joanne Webster. I'm president of the HCA steering committee. Not president of the steering committee, I'm on the steering committee, but I'm CEO and president of the Santa Fe Chamber of Commerce, and I'm going to moderate this fabulous panel tonight. Thank you, Linda, for a great exercise. I certainly have a better idea of what affordability in Marin. In our Powerhouse panel tonight, we'll be talking to you about the state of affordable housing and the work they're doing in Marin to make it more affordable. You will hear from diverse perspectives of individuals who produce, protect, and preserve housing in Marin, and how we can make our county's housing more attainable moving forward. We're going to first hear from the speakers, and then we'll open it up for questions. Please put your questions in the chat. We will try to get every question answered. This event is made possible thanks to our sponsors, Marin Community Foundation, EAH Housing in the Marin County Office of Education, and of course you, our coalition organization and individual members. To learn more about the Housing Crisis Action Group, please visit our website at housingcrisisaction.org. Please stay muted during the panel discussion and presentations, and don't forget to put your questions in the chat. Our panel includes Kim Thompson. She's Director of Community Engagement for Community Land Trust Association of West Marin, or CLAM. Roger Nelson, longtime president and owner of Midstate Construction. Eli Beckman, an architect, founder of the prefab ADU startup HAUS Plus, and the mayor of Corte Madera. And Marianne Lim, the director of portfolio finance and policy at EAH Housing, a nonprofit affordable housing development and management corporation. And tonight we're going to start with Kim, and she's going to tell us more about CLAM.
Great, thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay? We're good to go? Okay, terrific. It's quite a privilege, an honor to be with everybody here tonight, to be with the family of housing advocates, and really to recognize also the tremendous capacity that Housing Crisis Action has built across the county to change the game in Marin. Especially with events like this, and the culmination of work that you all have done over the years is extraordinary. And I also want to give a shout out to the very close to home family, the people from West Marin who are joining in tonight, from CLAM and from the Bolinas Community Land Trust, and from the San Geronimo Valley Affordable Housing Association. And together also with the Stinson Beach Affordable Housing Community, we comprise a group of people across 4 distinct communities, but really operating out of one strong, steadfast, passionate spirit to create affordable housing in our communities. So, and we're all community-based. So this is a really great opportunity to share the perspective that we bring as community land trust and as community-based organizations into the affordable housing conversation. Straight out the gate, the heart of CLAM is community. We are a community land trust, and that is a community-based organization that acquires property. We take it out of the speculative market forever, and we create rental and ownership homes that are actually in alignment with local wages and salaries, and we steward and preserve those homes over generations. 20 years ago, nearly 20 years ago, some of the people that are in this meeting tonight from CLAM actually were community members that could see even 20 years ago, before Craigslist, that the housing market was actually never going to be broad enough to serve the needs, the housing needs of local workers, of the people who were raised in West Marin, and they wanted to have the opportunity to continue to live there. So this group of people that, you know, included massage therapists, a minister, an artist, you know, a real estate broker, other just people from the community decided to take it upon themselves to find a model of organization that would ensure that property went into the community's hands, stewarded and controlled by the community for the community's benefit. And that's why they landed on a community land trust model that does just that. And so even though we, like other West Marin housing organizations, operate in the challenge of Marin and the challenge of rural coastal West Marin, which has some additional features to it, in 20 years, CLAM has created 20 homes. That's 18 affordable rental homes, 2 affordable home ownership homes, the only 2 of their kind in Marin County. And we've also, as a community organization, been able to partner with our local homeowners of single family homes who value retaining an inclusive community and who have agreed to create affordable JDUs and ADUs and home shares in their homes. And so through working directly with local property owners through our Real Community Rentals program, we've actually created 24 additional units just in the last few years. And some people know of the long time effort that CLAM and the West Marin community has taken on to really take a US Coast Guard housing site that had become vacant and had more than 30 townhomes on it and was going to be sold at auction to the highest bidder to anyone in the world, and to actually ensure that that property came into the community's hands for affordable homes. And so after a number of years of work, around 5 years of work, this past year, that property was awarded to the CLAM Eden Housing Partnership. And so we're very excited as a community land trust to move forward to develop an additional 40 to 50 homes. Any community CLAM founder will tell you that people said, it's crazy, no community organization can actually create affordable housing in Marin. And all of us in West Marin are proving that wrong. We all have substantial properties and portfolios and teamwork to continue us forward. The way we do that is a community land trust. How does a community land trust actually stay community and create affordable housing? Well, we have a locally elected board of directors, between 12 to 15 people, and we have a local membership. So we have currently over 500 members. Each of them pays a very modest $35 a year annual fee. If you want to join Bolinas, theirs is only 10, huh, Evie? And that local membership fee helps affordable housing organizations to do our work, while also giving members a direct vote on who comprises the board of directors. The board of directors is also structured in a way where there's a balance of interests. So in this way, CLAM is an organization that's of the community. We are accountable to the community, and we hold in trust these homes for the community. And I just want to say, following that, just a couple of words on this, this word affordable and affordable housing. You know, I'm sure I'm with all of you who has struggled around how we frame our work in Marin's housing market. And at CLAM, we really get into juicy conversations, talking and going back and forth about this. So there's really no easy answers in terms of how to frame our work for the greatest impact, how we message it, because we're treading on all kinds of stereotypes around affordable housing. There was a New York Times reporter that came to talk with us at CLAM, and he called the Marin housing market a monocrop of $1 million homes. That's what it is. And isn't that exercise kind of just proven that point, that maybe there's a lot of housing or some housing at one very narrow end of the market, and the rest of our communities are simply not covered, are not covered in that. So when we look at I think I come back to that phrase because I don't know about you, but when I've been advocating in front of the Board of Supervisors for greater affordable housing, sometimes I can feel like I'm having to justify why we need affordable housing. And I can feel like I'm having to justify who deserves affordable housing, right? But actually, when you look at a market that is not a broad market, it's a monocrop of $1 million homes. As long as we consent collectively across large society to have a monocrop of $1 million homes to find the market, then we must collectively take on the full responsibility to create the housing ecosystem across the rest of the bandwidth that our communities need to thrive. We should never have to justify why someone earns this income or that income, or needs this household size or that household size. We're human, of course, of course. Let's take a look at what the market is doing and what the market is not doing, and see how we can reframe this conversation toward the thriving communities that we need and deserve. So this is also, you know, we always talk about this. There's many ways to frame it, but in terms of actually creating that ecosystem, I really appreciated the last slide that Linda put out there that includes inclusionary housing and subsidies, ADUs and zoning. We can think of many different things that go into a housing ecosystem. From a practitioner's perspective, that feels like a bunch of separate chunks that we as practitioners have to pull together and do all kinds of gymnastics in order to actually produce. And so I think one of our tasks now, especially in this very right moment, is to help move those chunks together, refine them, work collaboratively in new ways to create the housing ecosystem, the fullness of it that our county needs.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for your passion about this, and you know, recognizing that the number of units you've built in West Marin is so impactful just because of the size of the resident population. So thank you so much. One quick question: how transferable is a community land trust?
Transferable meaning to other communities?
Sure. Or is this, you know, is the land trust, you know, recognized by the board of directors, or who actually has, you know, owns the land trust?
Yeah. So the board of directors is our governing board of trustees of the land trust, and the land trust holds the deeds to the properties and all of the affordability covenants that go along with our properties to ensure that we steward them. To the other point, there are, you know, when I began, community land trusts were this underdog, hardly known entity that now, kind of unfortunately, because of our rising income inequality and the way communities have felt so marginalized in housing, there has been a proliferation of community land trusts across California, across the country, and internationally. And so we really feel a strong sense of connection to a much larger movement. Every CLT is different. Every CLT is figuring it out for their own community.
Great, fantastic. And there's a question in the chat: how are the Airbnb of housing impacting West Marin and the work that you're trying to do?
Yeah, sure. Airbnbs and also vacation homes are definitely impacting our community. If you walk down any of the little roads of Inverness at night, you will only see houses with a few lights on because the rest of them are empty. Meanwhile, our residents are moving out and moving out and moving out over the years. So this discrepancy is really disheartening. And I'd like to speak later to the ways we can use our existing built environment in much more dynamic and effective ways.
Great. Yes, we'd love to do that too. Thank you so much. I'd love to introduce Roger now. Would you please start your presentation?
Katie, can you put the slides up, please? Great. I'm Roger Nelson. I'm president of Midstate Construction, a I think about changing that after Joanne's initial introduction to longtime president. It gives it more gravitas. So we are a general contractor located in Sonoma. We do the easy part. All of the financing and the work and the time that goes into getting affordable housing ready to go is the heavy lifting. And you rarely think of construction as being the easy part, but it's much easier than what many of you do in putting these together. Next slide. About 20 years ago, we started working with affordable housing entities. These are a few of the people that we work with, including EAH, Marianne and Eden, PEP, John Stewart, Mid-Penn, Mercy, and Burbank. We found that it has now become a fairly significant portion of our work. We enjoy doing it. We like the people, we like the product, we like the goal. Next slide, please. I wanted to focus on some things we're doing elsewhere as a spur to what I think needs to be done in Marin. This is a project underway right now in Santa Rosa. It's called Lantana Place. 48 units. The developer is Burbank. This is remarkably an affordable housing project that is for sale. And the clientele are low and moderate. So total range 60 to 120%. It is a non-prevailing wage project, which means it's 30% less expensive than a prevailing wage project. Next slide. This is what they'll look like when they're done. This is a rendering. They're getting close to this in the first phase. Very attractive duets, tuck under garages, and approximately 1,500 square foot units. Next slide. Another project in Sonoma. This is with SAHA, funded with 9% tax credits, 48 units. Affordable family units, 30 to 80% of the area median income. Underway right now, we'll finish in about 4 months. Next slide. This is a rendering of what they will look like when completed. This is on Broadway near the Freedmans. Next slide. This is Marisol Village in Sacramento. It's 123 units, just started. When complete, Marisol Village will be 470 units. Affordable, family, 30 to 80% area median income. Next slide. This is what they will look like. And next slide. In Marin, we've done in the last 5 years 3 projects that are basically residential renovations. This one was for EAH. We did Mackey Terrace and Piper Court. This is 25 units, all of which existed. It's a renovation. Clearly a big difference between what is going on in the rest of the counties in this state and what's happening in Marin. Next slide. As you all know, the impediments here are land availability. I included prevailing wage and project labor agreements. It's expensive to build anywhere. It's really expensive to build in Marin. And neighborhood resistance. Still, it can be done. So the next slide, Katie. This is a project we did a long time ago for EAH. It's in Tiburon. Delightful views. It's senior housing. It's a gorgeous, almost campground-like feel. It's in a pretty Tony neighborhood, and it's small. There's 16 units, but it fit on a piece of ground that was available. Next slide. This is a project we did for PEP, Tucson Senior Housing in Kentfield. This is for very low income, to the point where one of the people who lived there pushed a shopping cart up the hill to move in. And a great feel-good project, terrific view of Mount Tam, fabulous place. Again, a small number of units, but it fits well in the site. And we can't, I can't see a Mirasol with 470 units of what I showed you in Sacramento ever fitting in a Marin environment or being accepted. But this is the kind of thing that can be done. There are 12 different financing sources to make this work, but it can be done. Next slide. Some self-promotion for EAH, who have presently put together a team of which I am one of the partners, and BayHAC architects. This is a 89 unit development that they are submitting to the state right now. This is excess land on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. It's referred to as a agri-hood. There are orchards. There's raised gardens. There's a knoll at the back that has a great view. There's a park on the water right across the street. This is the kind of thing we need to support. It's on land that is excess state land. It's available. It's a great place to live. And Scott Johnson will be reaching out to all of you to get letters of support sometime in the next 3 or 4 days so that EAH can win this project. Thank you. Let's get it going in Marin the way it goes every place else.
Thank you, Roger. And wow, these projects are beautiful and anybody would want to live there. And you talked about the obstacles in Marin. So what do you think are the misconceptions about affordable, the term affordable in Marin County?
What do we need to do? I think that for a long time we thought of Marin as a difficult place to build. Well, it is, but there's also the horsepower. There are a lot of people that want to get this done. There is financing available to get it done, and there's an income disparity that certainly makes it more necessary than any place that I just showed you on those slides. In Sacramento, you can get a pretty good apartment for $2,000. So I'm building a lot of affordable housing there. You can't get a pretty good apartment in Kentfield or Larkspur or Tiburon for $2,000. So you're never going to have the diversity of people that you want in a community unless you find a way to make it happen. And it's all about money. It's funding and finding the way to do it and having the will and the drive to do it.
And do you find building in Sonoma County versus building in Marin County, you have obstacles with the time that it takes to build the project, or the time that it takes to get the project approved is really what I'm trying to say?
Well, I think the approvals are possibly difficult, but they're difficult everywhere. We are just getting into the final stretch on a project in Santa Rosa that I was doing with my pal, John Stewart. It's been 20 years, and we're going to get it going. The Railroad Square, it's 129 units. It's in a historical setting, has an old brick wall and a water tower. Well, it's right next to Railroad Square. It's a great project. But that's 20 years. So yeah. A lot of these take a lot of time. I think the Altamira project I showed you, the Saha project on Broadway, I think it was 4 or 5 years to get that off the ground. I don't know how long Burbank worked on Lantana. But it's almost like you have to start out with multi-generational people in your firm in order to build affordable housing, because you got to have somebody, last person standing has to finally build it.
That's great. Love that. Well, thank you so much. And we'll come back to the panel with further questions. Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce Eli Beckman.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Eli Beckman. I just want to start by thanking all the organizations and individuals who made this possible, and of course, the sponsors who allowed us to be here today. I am the founder of House Plus. We are a prefab ADU startup company. I'm also the mayor of Corte Madera. Wanted to give a quick shout out to my colleague Shannon, who is on the line with us here today. Thank you, Shannon, for joining us. This is our little House Plus team here. I come at this angle of affordability from this issue from two different angles, obviously, and I'm going to talk about them separately because it's very important that I keep strict separation between my professional work and my public service. So I'll start with kind of the professional side. I'm an architect by training, and I think this is an issue that really grabbed my attention in part because of my own struggles with affordability. I live here in Corte Madera, my hometown. And after I came back to Corte Madera after college and was working at an architecture firm in downtown San Francisco, I was living at home. I still am living at home, as a matter of fact. The mayor lives at home. And the reason is that I could not afford for the life of me to live in Corte Madera. And as I was campaigning for town council, actually, one of the points that I kept raising to folks was that, look, I'm a young professional. This is my hometown. I add value in this community. There is no way in heck that I could ever afford to live in Corte Madera. And that's not right. We had at the time actually a apartment building here in town, Tamridge Residences. It's the biggest apartment building in town. It's, I think, 180 something units. And it has, I think the mandated 10% below market rate housing units. The cheapest, most discounted unit in that building was, I want to say at the time, renting for like $1,500 a month, or maybe even $1,800, something insane. And I was thinking, I work full time at an architecture firm. I went to college for 5 years to get this degree. I could no way afford to live in the most below market rate unit we have in Corte Madera. So that, I think, was kind of a powerful and eye-opening sort of experience for me. Through HAUS Plus, we are basically trying to make it easier for homeowners to build ADUs by leveraging good architectural design, prefabrication, and state law. And the reason I think that is so important to this discussion is because ADUs are generally considered to be a more affordable type of housing. We do have some jurisdictions like Corte Madera that consider ADUs to be inherently affordable, and I think that's problematic, and I'll get to that a little bit later on. But it is true that in general, your ADU commands a lower rent than a similarly sized standalone house or apartment. And so that makes them kind of a natural, they're not the silver bullet, obviously, but they are an important kind of tool in our toolbox when it comes to the various housing options that we have to put out there in order to address the affordability crisis. So HAUS Plus, as a company, we offer 3 different models for 3 different, kind of lifestyles. We've got a studio, a 1-bedroom, and a 2-bedroom. And our hope is that as these ADUs of different sizes kind of proliferate, we're going to see more options for people of diverse backgrounds, diverse life situations. I think the exercise that we did today was kind of spoke to that, right? We were all different people in different stages of life with different sort of family situations and different needs. And it shows that, we can't just kind of populate the world with even these little studio units, because there are folks with families, multi-generational families, who are struggling to find places to live. So I think it's important that we be really mindful when we talk about creating affordable housing, about making sure that we have a diversity of options available to folks, and that we're, kind of using a multi-pronged strategy, a multi-pronged approach that's going to bring us lots of different approaches here. So like I said, through HAUS Plus, we're trying to increase the prevalence of ADUs by making building an ADU as easy as online shopping, essentially. And we're hoping that by sort of taking the whole project management, element of a construction project out of the homeowner's hands, this will hopefully spur an increased creation of ADUs. Frankly, everybody knows Marin is an affluent area, and a lot of folks kind of have this perception that they just don't have time to deal with the sort of headaches of going out and finding an architect and then working with them on a design, and then putting the project out for bids, interviewing contractors, and it's just a lot. And frankly, it is intimidating if that's not your background, or if that's not something that you're comfortable with. So we're really trying to kind of sanitize that process for homeowners and really sort of piggyback on recent state laws that have kind of streamlined the permitting process, and kind of carry that ball a little further when it comes to making building an ADU as easy as possible. So one thing that I wanted to touch on is that, we're obviously talking about, how do we build more housing? That's kind of the essence here, right? And ADUs are an interesting solution there, because ADUs are a way to increase density without requiring sort of wholesale redevelopment of our existing communities. And that saves money, and it also preserves community character. And I thought when Kim mentioned, that we need to be looking at ways that we can use our existing built environment in ways that are more effective and dynamic, I thought that spoke exactly to kind of the role that ADUs can play potentially, where it is a way to increase our density again, without this sort of wholesale redevelopment that's gonna require radical changes, and is going to be much slower to implement and much more costly. So that's kind of my professional side, the House Plus angle here. Then I also wanted to talk about how I approach this as a member of the Corte Madera Town Council, currently serving as the mayor. Obviously, affordability is a major concern in Corte Madera, just as it is everywhere else in Marin and frankly, the Bay Area and much of our state. One of the main kind of driving factors, as many of you know, when it comes to housing production and especially affordable housing, is the RHNA numbers. And for anyone who doesn't know, the RHNA numbers, basically the Association of Bay Area Government, so like the regional Bay Area government under state law is empowered to go to every jurisdiction in the Bay Area and say, hey, you need to build X number of units of housing over the next 6 years. You need to do, if you need to build 1,000 units in the next 6 years, you got to do maybe 40% at market rate, 20% below market rate, 20% far below market rate. And they kind of basically give you a quota of how many housing units you need to build at different income levels, which is, I think, in principle, a good system. We do run into some tricky parts. One thing that we struggle with here in Corte Madera, for example, is that Corte Madera is, when it comes to the challenges of climate change, we're kind of taking it from both ends, because the west side of Corte Madera is up on the hillsides and is heavily forested. It's in the WUI, right, the wildland urban interface, and there's a high fire hazard there. And then the east side of Corte Madera is built, it pains me, but it's all built basically on filled marsh, which is just an environmental travesty that would never be allowed in this day and age, but the 50s was a wild time. So we have a big problem in East Corte Madera with flooding, and most of East Corte Madera is in a flood zone. So when you've got half of the town in fire zone and half of the town in flood zone, we've got literally about 2 blocks of Corte Madera that are not in a hazard zone. And so when ABAG comes to us and says, hey, you need to build, this number of units, and we've arrived at this quota for you using a formula that looks at your population trends in the area, income, existing housing stock, and geographical size, we're like, okay, well, the problem is that of our geographical size, like 98% of that land is in a hazard zone, and it doesn't feel logical to be mandating the construction of new housing for folks in areas that are going to be vulnerable to either wildfires or flooding in the coming years. So that's one very legitimate challenge in a process that I think is well-intentioned and has the potential to really make a big impact here. One other way in which I wanted to talk about the RHNA numbers as they relate to affordable housing, and specifically ADUs, is, like I mentioned a moment ago, a lot of agencies, Corte Madera included, consider ADUs to be inherently affordable housing. I think that's problematic, frankly, because we don't actually monitor what an ADU is rented out for when it's permitted and built in Corte Madera. We tick it off. We mark it as a unit of affordable housing as a credit towards our RHNA numbers, but we never actually come back and say, hey, we just want to check in on you. 5 years later, what are you renting that thing out for? Is it actually coming in below market rate? I say this even though it's not in my best interest as a businessman, but public service comes first. I really do think that it's important that jurisdictions do not simply give units a pass, even if they're ADUs, give them a pass on being affordable. We need to actually look at what they're being rented out for and verify that they are affordable, right? Trust but verify, if you will. So I do think that is a key kind of policy change that needs to be made here in order to make sure that these ADUs are actually, that we as a community are getting the full benefit out of them if we are to count them as affordable housing. Another thing that I wanted to talk about that's going on here in Corte Madera, Project Home Key, I think a lot of you guys are familiar with. We've got a Home Key project moving through the pipeline here in Corte Madera. As a matter of fact, the County of Marin is closing negotiations to purchase a 18-unit hotel here in Corte Madera, and they're going to convert that into permanent supportive housing. And this, I think, is really illustrative of the fact that the housing crisis, the affordability crisis, I think a lot of us, especially through our exercises today, for example, I didn't see all the scenarios, so I don't know if any of the scenarios were from the perspective of a homeless person, but the affordability crisis really also affects people who have nowhere to live at all. And I think that's something that's really easy to overlook. It's easy to think of somebody who's already, maybe inadequately housed, but is housed. And frankly, we do have a lot of folks. I want to say there's like 1,000 homeless people in Marin County. So, that's a big problem. And that is part of our housing crisis as well. So the Home Key project here in Corte Madera, again, 18 units, that is going to provide housing for 18 people who are currently unhoused, which I think is really important. It is going to count towards our RHNA numbers as we understand it with regards to our quota for very low income housing. And I think that's kind of a sort of a win-win situation, if you will, in that sense, is that we are able to do something good for our local homeless population, and God knows they need and deserve this help. And at the same time, we're, kind of doing our part towards meeting our obligations under RHNA. The other main tool that I wanted to talk about when it comes to how we mandate the creation of affordable housing in Corte Madera, we have a lot of folks, like when I was out campaigning, I had a lot of folks who came to me and said, affordability is a problem. Why doesn't the town of Corte Madera just build a bunch of units? Like, well, frankly, we don't have the money, we don't own the land, and that's just, that's kind of not what local governments do. We do have an affordable housing fund, but frankly, this is a tiny little town. We don't have that kind of money, and I think there's a lack of understanding about that out there. But what we can do is when developers come in and build multi-unit, developments, we require X amount of them be rented at below market rate, and we might even set a schedule of X% low income, X% very low income, and so on, kind of mirroring the RENA system. A lot of times our initial asks will be tinkered with during the approvals process. It's kind of a subject of negotiations. And I think that is one way where local jurisdictions can, I think there's room to be more aggressive when it comes to mandating affordable units. I think too often jurisdictions have sort of a tendency to kind of roll over, if you will, when it gets into that negotiation phase with the developers, and developers say, oh, you want us to go from 6 below market rate units to 7. Oh, suddenly, that breaks the bank here. The project doesn't pencil out anymore. It's like, okay, one, show me your numbers, please. I find that a little hard to believe that your profit margins on this unit were so thin that you can't sneak in 1 or 2 more below market rate units. But the other thing is that if that is the case, and it may well be, a lot of these developers do come to us in good faith. But if it is the case that the project doesn't pencil out, if we try and get a higher number of affordable units, I think that is an opportunity where we could very effectively spend our affordable housing fund. Because while we may not have the money to actually build projects ourselves, I think we certainly have the money to make a difference. And we can say, okay, developer, if adding another 5% below market rate units would really just kind of put this thing in the red for you, we'll kick in some money to help kind of subsidize, if you will, the creation of those units. So I think that these are kind of like the suite of tools that we're looking at right now when it comes to how we incentivize the creation of affordable housing at the local level. And that is all I've got for you guys right now.
Thank you, Eli. That was great. And thank you for your leadership and your service to our community. Really appreciate it. We do have a number of questions in the chat. One is about ADUs and how do we guarantee that the intended use is meant to help people live there and not become short-term rentals?
Yeah, that is a really good question. This is something that I think a lot of jurisdictions are struggling with. Various jurisdictions, I think we're all in Marin kind of at different places I think everybody's kind of got this like Airbnb ordinance on the horizon. We know something needs to be done. We at least need to weigh in on one side of the issue, whether it's allowing Airbnbs or regulating them or banning them outright. I think there's really interesting arguments to be made kind of on all sides here. I will tell you that I had kind of an eye-opening moment when I was campaigning personally. I was out, and I had always kind of thought like, okay, Airbnbs, I think, they're nice in kind of like a vacation destination type place, but maybe in your bedroom communities, in your communities like Marin County, maybe not such a fit. Then I ran into someone who was telling me, actually, she said, hey, look, I'm a homeowner. I own my apartment here. I am, what was the phrase, cost burdened, right? When you're paying more for your rent than you should be, and it's really impacting your ability to put food on the table or save for retirement or do any of the other things that we need to be doing. And she was saying, look, I want to have the right, the ability to be able to rent out my apartment if and when I'm not here. And I thought that was a really, a really compelling argument, frankly, is that, I think we often think about, these ritzy kind of mansions that are rented out as vacation homes, but I do think there's something to be said for short-term rentals as a way for homeowners in this incredibly expensive area, many of whom are house rich and cash poor, to be able to leverage their property, the one thing that they do have of value, and be able to get a little liquidity out of that. So it's a big kind of thorny issue that we as a town here in Corte Madera haven't really approached yet. I think it's kind of on our to-do list for the next year and a half here. It's in our work plan to take a look at that. So it's something that we'll be coming back to. And it's definitely going to be the subject of an in-depth community discussion because like I said, we have a wide range of perspectives here. And I would certainly be interested to hear the perspectives from our activists and organizations on the line here about what, how they think that regulations as they relate to short-term rentals, impact, how they may detract from the very necessary long-term rental market versus how they may be an important tool for somebody who's in a house that they can ill afford to actually leverage a little bit of money out of that. So I think there's a really meaningful discussion to be had there.
Oh, thanks. Complicated issue. Yeah. And I know you have to jump off, but I do have a final question for you because you had mentioned it and I had heard Senator McGuire speak about it, where there may even be state legislation where we're restricted from building in the wild, the fire regions. So, and you mentioned that about Corte Madera. So how do we build in Marin? What political steps do we need to take to create this affordable housing that we just went through this exercise we know we need to have when we're going to really have restricted areas that we can't build in?
Yeah, so you, I think, hit it right on the head. It is such a tough issue politically because we traditionally have a very anti-density kind of populace here in Marin County. But frankly, if we're going to use the land more efficiently, we really need to kind of pull in terms of our communities. And that involves both kind of slowly retreating from places where we either are going to be retreating voluntarily or where we're going to be forced to retreat by fires or sea level rise. You may ask yourself, okay, when we've got fires that come through and destroy a neighborhood, does it really make sense to rebuild that neighborhood in the WUI again? Where fires are more than likely to come through again in the future. So I think that's one angle where I think we need to look at kind of, almost, if you will, retreat by attrition. I do also think that we need to see a little bit more leadership in Marin County when it comes to the willingness to create sort of denser kind of like cores to our communities here. I think that frankly, this is something that is well achievable in a way that does not sacrifice the feel and charm of our communities here. I know a lot of folks, I think, kind of have this reactionary sort of response where they say, oh, density, I live in Sausalito, I live in Larkspur. I chose not to live in San Francisco, but it's like, there's a lot on the spectrum between Sausalito and San Francisco. And I think we need to all kind of step back and lower the temperature there and say, we've got a lot of, frankly, really successful multi-unit developments all throughout Marin County, tons of fantastically successful examples of ways that we've kind of densified the core pockets of these various communities in a way that actually adds value and makes these places perhaps an even nicer way to live. And it doesn't necessarily mean that all of our neighborhoods are suddenly going to be apartment buildings. We can be very tactful about and strategic about how we do this. As an architect, I think that's actually a really exciting challenge, right? Is looking at where do we place density to get the most efficiency out of our infrastructure and to create kind of the most public amenities for folks who are going to be living there. We see it happening in Corte Madera along the Tamil Vista Boulevard with the Tamridge residences, for example. Whenever these projects go up, we generally see at least some element of the community is upset about it. And within a couple of years, we realized not only has the sky not fallen down, but it's actually added great value to the community. The Tamridge Residences over here has a lovely little Andy's Market corner store on it. People love that. People from all through the neighborhood, not just the folks who live in the apartment buildings, love having that there. And I think it's an example of how these developments and this kind of slow sort of ratcheting up of density in a way that is still constructive to the community actually brings amenities that everybody enjoys.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Again, appreciate your service. All right. And now I'd like to introduce our final speaker, Marianne Lim. Welcome, Marianne. Katie, do we have Marianne?
Marianne, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was on.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'll give you a brief overview of EAH Housing and our work, and then speak a little bit about what I think affordable housing is. EAH Housing is a nonprofit that was founded with the belief that attractive, affordable rental housing is a cornerstone to sustainable living communities. We were established in 1968, starting from grassroots origins in response to the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and has become one of the largest nonprofit housing development and management organizations in Western United States. So the little map here shows some of our early Marin County developments. Next slide. We currently have over 600 staff, and we develop affordable housing, manage over 214 properties, both in California and Hawaii, and serve over 25,000 residents. my role at EAH is Director of Portfolio Finance and Policy. So I do a lot of regional, local, and national housing advocacy efforts, both on regulatory issues and legislation. Next slide. EAH currently manages 34 communities in Marin County, 27 which we own. And we also have 77 communities in the Greater Bay Area with 6 new projects in development currently. Next slide. So our real estate development team supports all phases of development services, from site identification and feasibility to financing and approvals and construction completion. Next slide. And here's some summaries of some of our Marin representative properties. Point Reyes Family is a 27 family units in duplex structures in Point Reyes Station. And Hamilton Meadows is a permanent supportive housing community in Novato. It was part of the Hamilton Base Reuse Plan. And their EAH partners with several service providers that have set aside to place their clients in the housing. And they also provide wraparound services so that the residents are stably housed. Next slide. Here's some photos of the renovation at Mackey Terrace, a 50-unit senior disabled community in Novato that Midstate Construction worked on the rehab. The site was originally developed in '92 and renovated in 2017, so it was 26 years old. And that was to preserve and recapitalize the housing stock. So we want to continually rehab our projects at certain milestones to make sure that the housing stock is still viable and extend the useful life. So in this case, we replaced the building exterior. We did accessibility, seismic, and life safety improvements, common area improvements, and water saving. Next slide. And this is a community garden that was also put in as one of the renovation improvements. Next slide. EAH is currently working on 2 rehabs. One is the Hillarita in Tiburon. It's 102 units. That's 46 years old. This includes 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units, which are hard to find as rentals in some place like Tiburon. It covers 7.5 acres, and the property was purchased by EAH because it was at risk of losing its HUD rental subsidy when the HUD HAP contract expires. And we're currently working on financing to layer on low-income housing tax credits to fund the rehab and extend the affordability for another 55 years. Next slide. Another rehab is Centertown Apartments. It's 60 units built in 1992 in San Rafael, and that consists of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. This community provides essential affordable housing for Marin County and San Rafael workforce. Many of the residents work in the service industry. The average annual income at this property of the existing households is 32% of the area median income, so quite low. And we're currently working on financing for rehab, which would include replacing the building envelope and fire, life safety, energy and water efficiency upgrades, and disabled accessibility retrofits. This property also, when we purchased it, was a failed condo project that was partially built, and it didn't include any community space. So we're proposing to add onto the property an 1,100 square foot new building in the interior courtyard so that we could provide a proper management office and provide services at the community. Next slide. EAH believes that a home is more than a roof over your head. It's also creating community that combines physical, intellectual, and emotional support. And for this, we work with over 250 public and private service providers and agencies and customize programs that serve the demographic and personality of each property. EAH has also been at the forefront of implementing new energy and water savings technology, including green asset management, education of staff and residents on conservation, and promotion of an overall culture of sustainability and environmental stewardship. Next slide. Resident services promotes healthy eating, active living, community building, physical and mental health, education, and civic engagement. And I'd have to say that these services and connections have been particularly important during the pandemic. Resident services has had to pivot to going from in-person group meetings and classes to virtual and digital programming. We're doing more wellness checks with our residents, one-on-one check-ins, more financial assistance referrals, given the, the pandemic and the impact to our economy, and participation in our food pantry, bringing food bank to our properties has increased from 40% to 80% of the households in some areas participating. So, during the pandemic, I'd have to say food, homeschooling, childcare, difficulty paying rent, mental and physical health have all suffered. And, this is, a lot of those are also same for people that don't live in affordable housing. But if you don't have jobs that allow you to address, homeschooling or childcare at the same time that you're working, it is very difficult. Next slide. So what is affordable housing? And I have to say levels of affordability and how much a household pays in rent varies depending on the target population and the funding sources of the property. So here I just list several different kinds of affordable housing. Public housing is, housing owned by a housing authority, and households can earn up to 80% of the area median income. They pay 30% of their income towards rent, and the remainder is subsidized by HUD. Section 8 housing, which many of you are probably familiar with, can be used outside of public housing on the open market. Households can also earn up to 80% area median income, and they pay 30% or up to 40% of their income towards rent. And the remainder is subsidized. And I say up to 40% because in areas like Marin County, where the rents are really high, the housing authority has certain payment standards, and it is difficult for somebody with a voucher to find housing that fits within those payment standards. And a tenant can choose to pay up to 40% of their income towards rent if they, really want to get into that housing. But utilization of vouchers is also in high rent areas is also a challenge, because HUD gives the housing authority a certain amount of money, and say, even though they may have, and I can't remember how many vouchers the Marin Housing Authority has, but say they have 2,000 vouchers, because the rents are so high and they have to pay high payment standards in order to for people to be able to use their vouchers. That may mean that they might not be able to actually deploy all 2,000 vouchers, because you know, the rents may cost more than what HUD gives them. Low income housing tax credit housing is financed using tax credit allocation from the state, which allows private investors to put equity in a project in exchange for a tax write-off from the losses and depreciation. And the rent paid varies depending on the level of affordability tied to the unit. So even though tax credit housing, you know, usually is affordable to people between 30% and 60% AMI, say there's only a 50% unit available, that means somebody at a 50% AMI income or below could live in that unit. So in some cases, a tenant may pay more than 30% of their income towards rent. But, and many older affordable housing developments are refinanced using low-income housing tax credits. This is in order to raise enough financing to pay for substantial rehab, as well as keep the affordability covenants in place. Usually it's extended for 55 years. And then there's permanent supportive housing, which is housing for special needs and homeless or at risk of homelessness. And usually renters are extremely low income, which means they're 30% or below. Some may not have any income, and hopefully some come with subsidies, but there are some without, and it makes financing even that much more challenging. Next slide. So this slide shows incomes in Marin County. The 100% income level is the median income. And I've highlighted what a 60% income level for a 4-person in Marin County would be $104,400. And then I show you at the bottom here what extremely low income, very low income, and moderate income categories fall within. So extremely low income is 0 to 30% AMI. Very low income is 30 to 50%. Low income is 50 to 80%, and moderate income is 80 to 120% AMI. Next slide. So here are the rents in Marin County, and what I've put up in this slide, the top numbers are what HUD deems were fair market rents for fiscal year 2020, and it's by bedroom size. So you can see here a 2-bedroom in 2020. HUD thought that the fair market rent is $3,339 a month. And the next table down below is what the low-income housing tax credit 2020 maximum rent limits were. So you could see a 2-bedroom at the 60% level, it's much lower by about $1,000 at $2,349. And then you could see as you're going down the income levels, what rents people, what rents the tax credit program sets the rents at. Let's see, next slide. So I took some data that California Housing Partnership put together. This is their Marin County 2020 Affordable Housing Needs Report. And they used income and information from 2018-19 to put this together. So some of their key findings is that There are 9,465 low-income renter households in Marin that don't have access to an affordable home. This means, you know, people are paying much more than 30% of their income towards housing. 72% of extremely low-income households are paying more than half of their income on housing costs. And renters in Marin need to earn $51.91 per hour, which is 4 times the state minimum wage, in order to afford the average asking rent in Marin. So our little exercise earlier, where my person only made, I think it was like $15 or $20 an hour. She was, you know, 60 with a grandchild, and, you know, you could understand why she couldn't afford to find anything in Marin. Next slide.
Marianne, sorry to interrupt you. We almost through the slides. I think we've gone over it just a little bit.
Sure. So let me skip down to this slide here. So I just want to you know, reinforce that affordable housing really is you know, not just subsidized housing for people that aren't working. This is for, you know, people that work in our community, you know, they're personal care aid persons, retail people, first responders, teachers, nurses, who, you know, just don't make enough given the income levels in Marin in order to afford housing. So I can end it there.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you so much. This is such important data, and it goes right along with our workshop, you know, to really make it, everybody understand the difficulties of what affordability is in Marin, and to actually define what affordable is in Marin. And thank you so much for your engagement. EAH is such a great partner in Marin County, and thank you for the work that EAH Housing does in this county. Thank you so much. All right, do we want to wrap up with some slides now, Katie? Thank you so much. So thank you all for joining us tonight. We have another forum with Senator McGuire coming up on January 13th at 5 p.m. And there's also an ADU fair with Aging Action Initiative on March 1st at 2 p.m. We will share all of this with you. Let me hit the next slide there. And speaking of slides, we're going to ask all the presenters for their slide decks, and we will be sending those to you in an email. Please follow us on social media at Housing Marin and at BayHAC, HAC. If you have any questions, please get in touch with Ethan. I'd like to thank Ethan and Olivia and Linda and Katie. Thank you so much for making this all work. And I think that's about it. Thank you so much all for staying with us. We know we went over incredible presentations. We only touched the surface. Our intention was to have you be able to ask questions to our presenters, but we know you all want to get home to your families. So we really appreciate the presenters. Thank you tonight. Thank you all for being with us this evening.